Hello, Writing Rabble. It's your rabble rouser, author Chris Everhart, back with another session for new writers who are looking to begin their fiction, and for experienced writers who are looking to get restarted or just want a new way of looking at outlines and writing fiction. A little bit about me: I'm the author of over 20 books for the mass market and some graphic novels, comics, and the occasional screenplay and short film. And I wrote the book up here in the corner. Am I pointing the right way? There we are. The Writing Rabble. Write and publish your books your way. Available on Amazon and Kindle. And that link is in the description. And as usual, we have my guy Wes here. Hello, Wes.
Hey man, how are
How's
you?
it going? Are you in your writing studio today?
Yeah, writing studio, I or AKA the lair or AKA the basement. Yeah.
AKA Daddy's Crisis Center.
Mm-hmm. Laundry
Cool.
room, Lego zone, it's all down here.
Nice. All right. Hopefully we can get a video tour sometime
Yeah.
of all the magic that happens there.
Yeah, right.
Um, yeah. How's your week been?
Great. I had a couple of really nice moments where the conduit of heaven opened up and I was merely a vessel for words to come through me. I feel like I had a moment Friday night. Usually I can get 800,000 words down. Friday night, 4,000 words. Just, yeah, it was, I was like, I just like woke up and I was like, looked at the word count and I was like, whoa, that felt great. So,
Awesome.
yeah,
In the
so,
flow, huh? In the
yeah, it
zone.
was so cool. I don't know,
Yeah.
I want to hyper analyze what led to that, all the variables and stuff, but I don't
Hmm.
know. I was just ready for it and I wanted to do it. And the thing that I think helped was that I didn't get stuck on that first sentence. I just wrote something and then it just kind of like trickled out after that. It was great.
Awesome. So you're learning to trust yourself.
Yeah.
No, it's super important, right?
Yeah.
It's, being able to trust that first line or those first words just to get going and start that boulder rolling down the hill, instead of second guessing, third guessing, fourth guessing if
Yeah.
this is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And were you using also the axiom of start late or enter late and leave early on the
Yes.
scenes? Yeah.
Yes. To the point where it might become confusing, but we'll see. Yeah, there's a lot of moments where I'm like, do I need to talk about them getting out of the car and walking into the coffee shop, or should we just start at the table, coffee mugs in hand? So
Yep.
that's what I've been kind of doing.
Yeah. And I say when in doubt, put it in, but we can always take it out later.
Okay.
It's just yeah. So trusting yourself to and the reader to pick up right where you're picking up, is it's takes a little bit of work, and a little bit of practice,
Hmm.
and you'll find your way into that more and more often, right? And so if you enter the scene late, the reader will come with you. You may have to do a little bit of scene setting and that kind of thing, but you can set the scene, the atmosphere, as you go along, right? So they're in the coffee shop, and if you did want to mention something about parking the car, uh, you know, you can mention that in the flow of the scene,
Okay.
rather than having them drive to the coffee shop, park the car, walk into the coffee shop, right?
Yeah.
Unless that detail is important to, what you're trying to say about the character or the scene.
Sure.
Um, for example, let's say somebody was watching your character,
Oh, okay.
right? Then it would make sense because that would come in at some point later. So
Right.
you're kind of setting up that idea of surveillance, right? So
Right.
there could be a little tension or even a little discomfort for the reader, like why the hell are we watching them walk into the coffee shop?
Yeah.
And then it can be revealed later.
Yeah. I suppose.
Yeah.
And sometimes I notice in books where, or shows too, where they'll show something they've never shown before, and it's like, oh, this is important, and they almost tip their hand sometimes.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that and you do that as a writer. You
yeah,
know, you make those decisions, and you don't have to make them all correct right away. When you get to go back through the story, you'll feel a little more of the flow on editing and on rewriting. You'll say, "Oh, guess what? I don't need those first three paragraphs. We'll just start, at this point." And
yeah.
if there's, one important detail you wanted to have, then you can fold that into the writing.
Okay.
Yeah. And how have you been feeling about plotting and outlining that we've gone over
Yeah.
in?
So I was initially using Scrivener with the Story Hill over here on my other window. And it was easier to sort of get off track a little bit. So
Uh-huh.
once you sent over that template, I folded the template into everything into one because I didn't want to have to like rewrite and then like push it into your. So I merged the two templates, and now I'm back to using the template as like a check mark. It's like, oh, here's where we need to have our inciting incident. Here's our ordinary world. Here's our threshold, and that's been a cool sort of trigger for what needs to go in that section. So, um, as much as I like the freedom of just kind of like jumping off, it wasn't really. It needed to be sort of corralled back in. So having the guideposts again has been super helpful.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let me show what I'm going to do is before we pull up your version of the Scrivener template, I'm just going to show the one I've created briefly. The reason we're showing this is that once I sent it to you, all the formatting that I had done as far as color coding didn't necessarily transfer over, and I'm just letting the rabble know this who's watching. So I want to show the color coding that I've done first, and then we'll take a look at yours. But first, actually, what I want to do before that even is I'm going to stop that, and I'm going to pick up. Let's see. I'm going to pick up an email that I got from John Truby,
Whoa.
who is a writing coach, and I've read a couple of his books and done some of his exercises too. And I think this is really telling. Okay, and I get every month or every couple of weeks I get something from John Truby. So it says you may have heard me say for the last 5 years. I've been obsessing with teaching writers the techniques of plot, right? Why? Because that separates the top 1% of writers from everyone else is the ability to construct complex plot, period. So this is
Wow.
really interesting. We've been talking almost entirely about outlining up to now, which, is plotting in a way, or, plotting is a big part of it. It says, here's the problem. There are more techniques that go into plot than all the other major writing skills combined. Most writers have some understanding of character and dialogue, but when it comes to plot, they think they'll just figure it out as they go, right? We've both been victims of that idea,
Yeah.
which never happens, he says. So why is plot so hard? Because contrary to popular belief, it's not a series of single obstacles the hero must overcome, or what they call beats in screenwriting. And plot isn't the sequence of actions of the hero seeking his or her goal. That's what appears to be that's what it appears to be to the reader. So the reader sees plot as the series of things that happen, right? Here's what it is for the writer, which most writers don't understand. True plot is the grand strategy the author and the main opponent use to put the hero in the greatest possible trouble and fool the reader.
Huh.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have put it in those words, but it makes a lot of sense, right? And it's got me wondering if, in creating the Writing Rabble Hill, the story hill, if I've hit if I've incorporated these, okay? But goes on to say, once you know this, the entire writing game changes. When you think in terms of grand strategy instead of individual obstacles, you realize that great plot carefully designed comes from a carefully designed campaign, a sequence of moves constructed to checkmate the hero and shock the audience.
Huh.
In other words, plot is the entire system of obstacles connected under the surface that you must create before the hero takes action. So, what's the real problem we're solving for? How do you keep track of all the characters, plot beats, genre beats, which we've talked about, threads, story elements, and scene weave needed to form a professional complex plot. So this was really, you need a system that handles the massive organizational work for you and which leaves you free to be creative. This is what I've been after for 20 years.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And he goes on to say, by the way, this is, if you go to, I think it's johntruby.com, you can sign up for this, How to Become a Great Plot Magician webinar that's coming up. I signed up for it because I'm really curious about what his take is on this, and also, as I said, to make sure that I've incorporated this into the story hill. So let's go then, and I'm going to take this one off, and let's go ahead and put this guy up, which is the story hill. And here we go, window, and let's share. It's fun to share. Okay, so do we feel like the story hill is accomplishing what John Truby's talking about there? About having that underlying structure that the story needs? What do you think?
I'm still spinning on what he said, the grand strategy that, yeah, yes.
We'll talk more about that, the grand strategy that you're cogitating on.
Oh, I'm trying to process what I think he just blew my mind.
How so?
Because the grand strategy that the author and the opponent must,
Yep, and the main opponent, right?
yeah, which is the antagonist, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And remember, I had we talked a little bit about this a week or two ago that as writers, these characters are like our little babies, and we want to be nice to them and get them through the hard stuff, easily. But our job as the
yeah,
author is to make the protagonist's life miserable,
yeah.
throw everything at him or her.
Well, since we talked, I think I've given my character at least 3 concussions in the last 2 days. So
Right.
I just didn't want to worry. I like that. I like not having them be precious because it is more shocking when they're not taken care of. But yeah, with Truby, yeah, this feels in alignment with what he was saying. It's a this is all stuff that happens behind the scenes that the reader is going to be shocked by. Sorry, I'm not. I'm still trying to think about what he just said. That. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's like I said, it's what, and by the way, johntruby.com is not the is not the right URL. I want to give him credit. So let's see if I can find that because he doesn't know he's helping me. Oh, Truby Writers Studio. Truby, and it's truby.com, truby.com. And he's got a lot of resources, a lot of webinars, books. Oh yeah, he's the one who wrote the Anatomy of Genres that we talked about, I think week 1 that I bought. Haven't picked it up yet, but I will be. It just reminded me of that. So yeah, so Yeah, so I guess I think that what we're talking about is the idea that, uh, and this is what we've been talking about quite a bit, is that I thought I knew how to write a story because I know how to read them and watch them,
Yeah,
right? And like anything else, when it's done well, it looks easy.
yeah,
And then, sorry for you, you ask Everhart to help you write a book. And on week three, you're wondering why the hell you ever asked me in the first place because this is way harder than you thought, right? And I'm serious when I say this is what I go through every time I start a new project. So I'm trying to work out uh, for myself and that helping you working this out for you, I believe, is helping me work it out for myself. To, as Truby said, be able to set up the story in almost a formulaic way, what we talk about genre expectations, right?
yeah,
So that we can get on his quotas, so we can get on with the fun part of
yeah,
actually writing it. So that's why, why I created the story hill, to try to explain it to you, and then I figure out that I'm explaining it to myself at the same time. And it's just the idea that looks easy, but it's a lot more work than we thought,
yeah. Yeah, and
right?
it's very important work to do on the front end because once I get to that creative part, like I was saying earlier, I just want to just go and it'll just spin off into oblivion and become. I mean, I've had four different themes and ideas pop into my head that I had to be like, does this really work? And is this gonna, and instead I just put it in my notes app and I'll use it for something else. But
Yeah, well, or if you write it through, put it in a separate folder
yeah,
in your document because you might use it for a different story in this series or something else completely, and then just name it, on that log line next to the folder, whatever notes or
yeah.
story ideas, something like that.
But without this outline, I would have just thrown it in, and it would have. Who knows? It might have just been a gigantic speed bump that throws the reader off, or I might shoehorn it in, and then it becomes super obvious what I'm doing, or
Right.
or it would work, and who knows? But yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
this is the hardest work that I could very well see. I mean, because I wanted to skip through this. I mean,
Mhm.
when you were still sort of holding me back in a way, which
Mm.
it it felt like, can we just get on with this already?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
but the more I have this to fall back on now, the more important I realize that all that work was.
Yeah. And it's important work. It's not just important to us, it's important that we do this for the audience, the
Yeah,
reader, right? We owe it to our reader to do our work, to do our job, and then it's the reader's job to decide if the story is good or if it's for them, right?
yeah,
It's not our job to decide that.
yeah,
So I'll just go briefly through the Story Hill, so named in honor of our llama mascot, who figures and gets a little beat up in my book, The Writing Rabble. So we're calling it Story Hill, where going up the left side of the hill on the way up, it's a lot of effort for our protagonist. And then at the 50% point where the goal changes for the story, now things are kind of out of control for our protagonist. So we've got in the Scrivener doc, we've got the story hill, and then I put in the separate character arc, which happens as the story goes on. And this is how the character must change in order to go from a basically an unworthy person to a worthy person, right? To solve their problems or to outgrow their problems. And again, this is just as much a part of the story as the stuff that happens, right?
yeah,
That we have to take into account how the character will and must change on the way. And then we have another folder for the stakes, if then. That's the stakes of the whole story, the dramatic question, the theme. We have a folder for a little doc for the mentor or guide, the antagonist, of course, and the MacGuffin, the thing that everybody's changing. And then then I've created the writing rabble outline, which again on my document is color coded. Have to figure out a way to transfer that. I was hoping that that would transfer and it would really help. Those color coded documents and folders would help you kind of keep track. So in ordinary world, we introduce the character, what the wound and flaw is, what the world is like, correct notions and mistaken notions, stated wants and unstated needs. And in each of these, there will be more added. Call to adventure is the first indication that there's a larger world for the protagonist. The protagonist will refuse the call. They'll be afraid to change. There'll be pressure to change, which is a plot point. That's something that's happening outside or an outside force thing event that is pushing the character to change, and the understanding that the in their in that phase that the that that the protagonist understands that the world is insufficient or they are insufficient, and something's got to change. Then we get the inciting incident at 25%. I call this the sheltered world because it's where this is phase three. It's if you're only listening to this, it's all in yellow. I call it the sheltered world because the character is sort of practicing what they must enact or the skills they must put to use for the bigger adventure and the bigger stakes in the story. So they go through a threshold, they're introduced to the new world. There's the challenges of learning that's colliding with the rules and limitations of the new world. They're going to meet people. The protagonist is going to be awkward, and there'll be confusion. It's called bull in a china shop phenomenon. The protagonist can't help but make mistakes and blunders, insult people, break the rules accidentally, and face the consequences. They'll meet allies and rivals. They have to adapt, and the protagonist will transform from being rigid by their old thinking to more flexible. For the new world, they'll learn new skills, they'll get a new perspective. They'll have a win in the sheltered world, and that means accomplishing something with their new powers in a scenario where the stakes aren't as high as the major stakes of the story. And that means false mastery. That means that the protagonist will have skills and demonstrate skills without the wisdom that they need in order to make that major change. At 50%, the goal of the protagonist changes, sometimes called flip the script moment. The entire apparatus of the story shifts toward a new I keep trying to say unrelated pursuit, a new but related pursuit. Um, uh, Best example is Jaws, and the first half of the story as Chief Brody is climbing that hill. He's trying to stay away from the shark and stay out of the water. At the goal change, Chief Brody goes after the shark. He goes on the water and hunts the shark. There are challenges of applying the skills that they know. There's an attack. Either they have to go out and do a mission, or they get attacked, which forces them into the bigger stakes of the story. They meet enemies. They're different from rivals. Enemies work toward the higher stakes of the story, and they represent the unsheltered world's lack of rules and limitations. Think of it as a war movie where in the first half, the soldier goes through basic training, right? There are rules and things, and then they get into war, and it's like, oh my God, it's way different, right? But related. and they're going to have a frantic reaction. They're just trying as hard as they can, as fast as they can, to do what they know to do up to that point. But they're applying skills without wisdom, and they are operating on the false or partial stakes. And what that means is that it's not the highest stakes of the story, and they also don't realize that they're fighting toward a goal that's set by the protagonist or the antagonist, not their own. They go into the belly of the whale, deep and simplified representation of the antagonist's power or desires. Great example of this is in Star Wars when the rescue party escapes capture or death by the stormtroopers in the cell block. They escape that by going into the trash compactor where they could get crushed to death. And the antagonist appears to be winning, which causes a lot of frustration with the protagonist and among his or her team, their allies. And what they don't realize is that they're going entirely on ego, and that causes group discord. They will have a false they'll have a false victory, which means that the it's a relatively minor victory. The protagonist's undeveloped skills prove successful, and but they don't realize again that they're actually playing into the hands of the antagonist. And then at phase five, which I've got in red, we've got the 75% point where the protagonist fails and the antagonist wins or is winning. Our protagonist goes through that all is lost moment where they don't see how they can go on. They have that low point. They believe for the moment that they are unworthy or insufficient. And then we reaffirm the true stakes of the story. The character has an awakening, their ego is completely crushed. Now they can begin to see how the wisdom that they've been ignoring all this time has is truly a major part of their progress, and that they must use it to win. So they admit their limitations. They have a reconciliation within themselves and or with their team. They synthesize all the lectures, lessons, and experiences. They put the whole thing together. They create a new plan, and the protagonist and team counterattacks with what they know. At the climax is the ultimate battle. The true stakes are on the line. All lessons are distilled by the pressure of the moment into one power, strength, or tactic, such as use the Force, Luke, right? When he's flying his X-wing toward the vent in the Death Star. They'll have a false defeat, which means that the protagonist appears to have lost, but they keep going. They have their final push, and they experience true mastery in this moment. That's the kind of the use of the Force Luke moment, and that's the true win. The Death Star blows up, right? And the phase six, which is the last 10%, or roughly, I mean, sometimes it's 1%, but this is the changed world, restored world. The protagonist realizes that they are sufficient and worthy, and then don't forget the loose ends, right? The danger over the horizon, danger hidden within the antagonist's defeat. A great example of that is in Star Wars when Darth Vader's fighter is shot, sends him spinning off into space, but not killed. Okay. So that is the color-coded version of the Scrivener template. Now let's have a look at Wes's, because he unfortunately wasn't able to transfer the color coding over. But you want to take us through where you're at so far?
Yeah. So, and I wish I had those 10%, 25% things too. I'm realizing that would be good to help me with where I'm gonna spend
Yeah,
time and less time. And I gotta
I
try
wonder.
again. With
Well, there's the thing about these are icons and stuff. I assumed that when you transferred the template over, that all the icons would come with it because those are
Yeah,
icons that I created. So I'll take another look at that this week and see if if there should be a way to do it. You should be able to grab a template and use it.
right.
But so let's have a look at where you are so far. And
Okay. So, yes, ordinary world. Um, here's I just pulled in all the each text box and added some of my own. So I have him, um, and some of these are just sign posts for now. And then I just kind of launched into the first. This is page one of the book. Here is him getting up out of bed and starting to go about his day. Um, Everything's great. Everything's perfect. This is his, ordinary world, and it's a state of perfection type moment. So, um, do you want me to go through anything specifically, or do you want me just to go through what
just go
of
through it
the?
generally if there's something specific that jumps out. By the way, go to the top of that document because I think I noticed it doesn't matter how cold it is outside Russ won't feel it. So is this third person or is that a note to yourself?
No, that's how it starts.
Okay, gotcha. So you're doing it third person, right? Because Russ is the protagonist.
Yeah,
You're describing what Russ is doing. It's not Russ describing what he's doing.
right.
Okay, or
Yeah.
did.
Is that odd, or is that is that not normally how it's done, or?
Well, what's the genre expectation for uh, urban fantasy?
I don't know that we
Let's
delved into that when we did that part of it. Maybe we did, and I
Yeah,
forgot.
yeah. I think let's see. Let's look that up right now. Urban fantasy, first person, or just look that up. Might as well Google it. Might as well use it. First person or third person? Why so much urban? Well, why is so much urban fantasy written in first person?
Hmm.
So it's kind of and I kind of knew the answer to this, but let's see. First person can be used with little trouble for urban fantasy novels or any novels that take place on Earth or something very like it. Okay, so third person narration is best if you have multiple perspectives which you want to write from.
Hmm.
The expectation of diversity of the voices of your narrators will be smaller. So if all of this, and I I believe that most urban fantasy is first person.
Okay.
That point about if multiple perspectives, that is kind of if if you want to break away at different points to another major character's perspective, like what are the bad guys doing right now?
Okay.
Now that's entirely the choice of the author,
Yeah.
right? Um, a lot of thrillers and detective fiction are in the third person. Um, I I don't know. What do you think? Talk through the way you're telling the story and first person or third person. Does one appeal to you more than the other, or did you just kind of
This is just every time I sit down, it just seems like it should come out this way. Like
okay?
it just felt natural to begin this way.
Hmm.
Um, and every time I am writing, it's just how I don't know, it's how I want to do it for some reason. I don't have a really well
Okay.
thought out reason other than it just feels right to me for some reason.
Yeah. Well, it's like that's your voice. That's for
Yeah,
this story in particular. Yeah.
but I do catch myself going into, now that I think about it, there's a couple moments where I did slip into first person, so that'll have to make I'll have to make sure that's consistent.
Well,
Um,
I can tell you from experience, make that decision early
yeah,
because I had a third person story that I decided to convert to first person. I mean, an entire YA novel, about 75,000 words.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I'll just change, he to I and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was
Really?
way harder. Oh yeah, yeah. So,
Well, I've
you
only
know,
got a couple moments, and it really felt weird as I was doing it. Now that makes sense. It's because I was switching perspective, and I don't really know why I was doing that, but there was a couple
mhm.
moments where a couple even just lines where it switched into first person. I must have been trying to get something across that made more sense to do that. But
Yeah. Well, I think also that, I mean, obviously, there's a much more personal point of view with first person. I
right,
did this, I did that because, right? Or I was thinking this when X happened.
yeah,
Um, I'm trying to,
yeah. It's
I'm
like getting
trying,
into the character's head is easier when you can say maybe
yeah,
I think versus Russ thought that. Yeah,
right. And I'm trying to put together why things like urban fantasy might be particularly um, uh, conducive to first person. Um, you know, I so like epic fantasy typically is not, right? I mean, it's multi point of view.
yeah, right,
You know, what they call head hopping, which is, this person's thinking this and then that person's thinking that.
yeah,
The general rule there, if you're a third person, is you don't want to head hop within a scene.
you're right,
You know, you need to have a break, a chapter break or a section break if you're going to switch points of view.
yeah,
And it can be, same point, different point of view on the same event. You just have to make sure you delineate it. Otherwise, you're getting into the omniscient uh, uh, tense, and that's hard to write and keep track of.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's funny because I know, so I've read some urban fantasy, and I know it's almost always in first person. Um, it could be it could be the voice, of the person who's encountering these phenomena,
Yeah,
right, and trying to work through them.
maybe it feels more personal if it's in that first person because then the audience can feel more in like it's happening to them as well versus it's happening to somebody else. So those the moments of the masquerade or the the big bad evil people feel more threatening or something.
Yeah. Yes, that it's more immediate. Of course, it would
Yeah,
be first person, right?
right.
But yeah, I don't know. So anyway, all I know is that you should decide early because you
All
don't
right.
want to go back and try to fix it later. It's not as easy as you think.
Right now it's in
Um,
third person, so I
okay.
might be leaving it there.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Okay, so yeah, let's just go through and tell us where you've gotten to so far within these sections and
Okay, so
wrap about it a little bit.
ordinary world is establishing why his life is great, what parts of his life are amazing, and so then later on, those things can be turned on their head. So those moments where he pulls into the garage at his building, and it's a heated garage, and he just all he has to do is hit a clicker. Well, later on, there's going to
Which
be a
is
moment.
important in Minnesota, everybody.
Yeah, exactly. Um, he goes from his heated house to his heated garage to his heated car, which has a remote start, to his heated underground parking at his building. He never feels the cold. So he has this distance from the world, and the world can't touch him. He's insulated, he's elite, he's upper crust. And then later on, when everything starts to fall apart for him, those things are going to be all that whole shield is going to be destroyed, and he's going to have to come face to face with the rest of the world, and that's going to be important for later when we get to the goal change. But I'm not there yet. But what I do have is ordinary world, a couple moments at the house, a couple moments at work,
Uh-huh.
where he's just absolutely in his element, crushing it, killing it, all those, um,
Being
there's
awesome.
being awesome. Yes, he has a success. He closes the zebra account, and
Mhm.
then I have this moment here where he goes and he does something that I really really like, and I was telling you about this earlier this week, and I think I'm gonna make it work, and that those could be famous last words, but I really like that scene, so we'll see.
Yeah.
I get to establish him with his kids. So we're gonna have that early on, and in that same, there's a scene where he's driving, but it's important because we're going past landmarks that he's gonna come into contact with later. He's on his way to bring his daughter to hockey. They're talking about winning, and winning's not everything, and they're laughing about that because, of course, it is to them.
Mm.
Um, Passing a water tower, which we're gonna have a very intimate encounter with later. So we're kind of trying to establish both things at the same time. The Next, I get into the call to adventure, or this section: refusal to call, fear of change, insufficient world. This is where we have the moment with the his dad dying, but he doesn't know it. He first experiences it by falling off of a treadmill and something happening as he's falling off, and he collides with the wall, and there's a vision, and it briefly coalesces into being, and we'll find out later that that was the genie leaving him. And
All
that's when
right.
he gets the phone call finally. He gets through to his wife: your dad's dead. We go to the memorial service. He meets someone from his dad's past who knows Russ from when he was a kid. He knows Russ's dad. He wants to tell him about his dad. Russ doesn't care about this guy. This guy reminds Russ of a lower class type of person in Russ's eyes. So he's
Mm.
virtually refusing the call of this person who's trying to, at least that's what I'm calling it right now. He's trying to bring him into, or offer him position in a different world, and Russ is saying no. Um, and then now that the genie's gone from him, this is where things start to fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
He can't get into his garage at work. He has to tangle with an unhoused person who's trying to just get some money from him.
Mm-hmm.
He has a whole frantic, moment with that. He then goes up to work, and this is where I had that character just appear out of nowhere of Russ's assistant. His name is Ned. He I must have been watching a lot of The Office lately because that Zach Woods character from The Office just popped into my head, and he popped into the story. So
Yeah. Was
um,
that just this week that that happened, or did we talk about that last Sunday
I
on the?
think we talked about it. I'm not sure if we talked about it in any
Yeah.
length, but it
So
yeah,
but I, yeah. So in like the first or second episode, I said, um, I think I'd asked you, have any characters shown up yet and demand to be?
yeah,
And at that point, there hadn't been, but I said it will happen, that the characters will show up fully formed and demand to be seen and heard.
yeah, literally knocking on the door with something that
Yeah.
they need the main character to tangle with. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
exactly what
by the
happened.
way, and that's some of the real fun of writing fiction. And it's, can't remember what I was going to say next, but so yeah, that's part of the fun is, and the surprises that it for us as the writers. It's like that, you know, I think that I had imagined that, oh, anytime there's a book, that this, the writer had all these things and all these people in mind, but it turns out that, yeah, that characters will just show up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and this character showed up. It was a problem that I had in my head of just some simple logistics,
Mm,
and I was trying to solve that, and then all of a sudden, like a knock on my skull, this character shows up and is like, "Here, I'll handle this problem for you. I'm the obvious solution here." And Russ needs an assistant. Why wouldn't he have an assistant? Everyone who's rich and powerful and successful has an assistant, if not multiple assistants. So of course he would,
mhm.
and of course he's going to help me solve this logistical problem. So that's where he came from.
Yeah, nice, fun.
Um, so then we have Adam showing up. Adam's the genie, and while he escaped from Russ's body on the treadmill, he's now back to tell Russ the whole story, and he's trying to give Russ the lowdown on what's going on with his dad. Russ is very, very uncomfortable with Adam and his presence. He is a very different type of dresser, a different type of person than Russ is used to dealing with. And he keeps mentioning how he was inside of Russ, and that makes Russ very uncomfortable because, of course, who wants to reckon with the fact that they may have had a spiritual being in their body for, 35, 40 years or whatever. So it's all just very foreign and crazy and doesn't make any sense to Russ, and he doesn't want to believe any of it.
Okay, so
Um,
I think that in when you were originally talking about Adam, the genie leaving Russ's body,
yeah.
I had in my head that Russ literally sees the genie jump out of him. Was that right, or
Yeah.
did you always have this in mind that the genie would show up as a person?
He leaves Russ's body, and maybe I have to explain where he goes, but he leaves Russ and then he comes back to him later. I I always picture when I'm thinking about Adam is that he was trapped inside Russ's body for 35 years, let's say,
Yeah,
and he's ready to go sow some oats, or he's ready to go, you know,
yeah. Time to live a little.
yeah, and he's like, I need a break. Jesus, like I just need a second here. And then now he's gonna get back to business with Russ. So that's kind of what I have in my head, and I should probably include something about that. So because the stakes are about to get raised here, and the urgency and the ticking clock is coming. So I
Okay.
need to explain why Adam doesn't do something right away about that. So
Yeah, I like if I'm tracking you right, I like the idea that yeah, Adam just takes off for a while
yeah,
and Russ is completely screwed. He's just, this part of his life is just everything's going to hell within like 5 days. And then,
yes,
then Adam shows up and explains to him why things have gone so bad all of a sudden.
yep. and
Yeah.
that and that's what's happening now is he's getting in a car accidents, he's getting pulled over by the police where he's never been pulled
Hmm.
over before. I have a scene earlier where he's driving, he's texting, the cop just doesn't pay him any mind, and all of a sudden now he's getting pulled over for
Yeah.
texting, he's getting into accidents.
Hmm.
There's a whole section on the 394 94 merging
Oh,
debacle that will rile up, hopefully rile up people from this area because it's a constant point of contention.
yeah.
Um,
Well, the key in those points will be to make it relatable to anybody anywhere, right? That
yes, yeah,
what a mess that is. But one thing that came to mind too is you mentioned that he has an interaction with a homeless person. Um, that would be interesting if those characters, those run-ins,
yeah.
were genies of some
Oh,
kind or some kind of spiritual beings. Kind of like the old axiom of, you treat strangers as yourself because they might be God.
oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so you have a lot of little opportunities there to advance the genie angle.
yeah. That's okay. I'm gonna have to use that. Yeah, I think I did a okay job of explaining the experience to people. Um, but time will tell.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's something I saw earlier too about when, he just, his wife calls and he says, "What's going on? I just fell off the treadmill."
yeah.
And she says, "Your dad is dead." That is that is a status change in a scene.
Okay.
That goes from, he's having this little boo-boo and then all of a sudden, he learns that his dad's dead.
Yeah. Let's see. Where I'm at now is I'm into the sheltered world, and then it takes off into Adam and the genie, or Adam and Russ get kidnapped. They wake up in a cold, dark space where the reader won't know where that is yet. We meet the antagonist here, and we also meet Bob kidnaps them. Bob is the sergeant to Bill, who is the antagonist. There's some dialogue there, and then we jump right into the threshold where this is kind of out of order. I have to find where I put. They jump right into luck farming. There's a snowfall. They go to the impound lot. They're hanging out by the front entrance of the impound lot, siphoning off the bad luck energy that is pouring off anyone who was unfortunate to have their car
Yeah,
towed in incidents.
nice.
He then Russ gets a little cocky and he runs afoul of a fellow luck farmer, although he's not aware of it. And we learn that there's a whole hierarchy and a whole system to these. There's territories. He messes with an Uber driver who ends up being a different version of a luck farmer, and he has a run-in with that person. And then we go to Perkins, and some of these are I'm not seeing here, but I know that I wrote them, so I'll have to find them. But yeah, here it is. So they go to Perkins, and Russ or Bob explains to him kind of what's going on with, we don't mess with the Uber drivers, we don't go into downtown after dark. There's territories, there's rules to this luck farming, and he
Nice.
gives
Very nice.
Bob or Russ some more explanation on Bill's angle. Bill is a slumlord who farms luck out of his crappy properties by turning the water off randomly or making up weird parking restrictions or having the change machine for the laundry machine only give out Canadian quarters. Like, he just messes with his tenants. And
So I think I'm still a little unclear about the luck farming
yeah,
because when you say that they're farming luck, it sounds like it sounds like you're saying that they're harvesting misery.
yes,
Are they? So how does it work? Are they taking the good fortune from people so all that's left for them is the bad fortune, or are they somehow is somehow the misery useful to them?
the misery is useful to them in that when the person so they harvest the misery, they go back and they sell it. And the current working theory is, and I understand this might need some tweaking, but the current working theory is that just like in nature, when you have a high pressure front or a low pressure front, nature always seeks to balance itself out.
Okay.
So by a character, a rich person, a successful person, inhaling a certain amount of misery, the universe will then reward them with good luck in order to balance that out. And
Okay.
um, and it makes sense to me, but if it doesn't make sense to anyone else, I will refine it. I found some instances of it. It's called enantodromia in cognitive theory. With Freud had some ideas on it, and Jung had some ideas on it, and so there's some kind of basis there. But if it doesn't make sense, I will change it. I'm not super attached to it. I kind of like
Well,
this
I
idea of
I
balance.
can tell you that yeah, this is like the fourth or fifth conversation we've had about this, and I'm still unclear. So what you're saying is that in order to get good luck, the the people have to ingest bad luck.
Yes.
Okay. Little convoluted.
Yeah, a little bit.
Freud notwithstanding.
Yeah.
I I
So the
I see
workaround
what
could be. Go ahead.
but what I think of what you're saying is that the misery or bad fortune that we see in the world in general is that someone or something is feeding off that.
Yes.
Okay. The way that would make more sense to me, and again, you do it however you want to,
Yeah.
but is that the reason that somebody in an apartment slum is miserable is because someone is siphoning off their good luck and good fortune,
Yeah.
or they're trading it for something,
Yeah.
right? Does that
That makes sense.
still hit your theme?
Yeah. I mean, it would take a couple slight tweaks and I wouldn't have to mess with a lot. I mean, I also have an idea where, and it maybe is a little thin, but there's some kind of refining process where they are able to transmogrify it into good energy or something like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's super important that I get this to where it's not convoluted. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, because one of the things that I love about urban fantasy and horror stories and that kind of thing is that it explains phenomena in our real world just in a
yeah,
different, in a different way, in a creative way.
yeah,
So, someone who has had a lot of difficulty in their life, it's because someone else has been draining their good fortune,
yeah,
right? And they're only left with misery, and that's all that they can see for themselves, right? So the rich, quote, the rich get richer, right? The lucky get luckier,
right,
or the people with good fortune get more good fortune, while the people who are being exploited by them, stay worse off.
yeah, and that
It's the
simple,
economy that we talked about, right?
yeah,
That
I
yeah,
and
that
that
in
makes
urban fantasy, there's usually an underground industry of magic and an economy of magic.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah, and that explanation makes more sense than what I have so far. But yeah, more to be
Well,
tweaked.
and then what if there are other creatures or black genies or I mean dark genies or something like that who do feed off the misery,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. That opens it up for sure.
Well, now there's in this economy or in this industry, there's someone who really feeds off the bad fortune,
Yes. Um,
and maybe they could be like to this world that or this culture that Russ is getting pulled into. Those dark siders are like, oh, we don't mess with them. They're gross, stay away from them. And then
yeah,
it also gives you opportunities later to get Russ into that underworld culture, the dark side, so to speak.
right. Yeah, there's more realms to play in then. Yeah,
Right. And it could be, demons versus or genies versus demons or something like that.
yeah. Okay.
But again, you decide uh, what's right for the story.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that, I'm not connecting why they're feeding off misery.
yeah. And that part always. I mean, I know I had to do some legwork there. I thought I had cracked it, but the more I try to explain it, the more confusing it is.
Right.
Which is good. I mean, I don't think I have a whole house of cards built on it at this point.
Mm-mm. Yeah, no, it's a pretty simple, you know, pretty
Yeah,
simple flip,
yeah.
switch to flip. So, yeah.
Okay. Um, so yeah, exposition, explaining the world, and yeah, that's where we get into that stuff with the territories and the different creatures and stuff. So yeah, I can easily switch some of the stuff around.
Yeah, and I like
Um,
that you have a document called Mythology Time.
yeah,
This info dump warning, by the way.
yes,
So yeah, and so now that you've written this stuff out, you're working out your universe a little bit. Um, as you go on, you can start to incorporate rather than have an info dump. You can start to incorporate those lessons into that phase three
yeah,
as he encounters these things along the way, and someone's kind of teaching him what this means and what that means.
yeah.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. Is Bob is now a part of the team with Russ, whether Russ wants him there or not, and Russ does not want him there. But
He's
Bob
kind of
is,
insinuated himself, and he's somewhat useful, or appears to be.
yeah, and the new
Okay.
wrinkle is that Russ's dad stole this genie from Bill, and now it's payback time.
Nice.
So
There we
Bob is
go.
hanging out with Russ until Russ is able to pay that back. So
Case.
now they're going everywhere together, and now we have a buddy, a buddy drama happening. And
Yeah.
the part I left off is that his daughter is sick and he needs to go pick up his daughter at school. And Bob's like, all right, let's go. And Russ is like, oh crap. So the worlds are colliding at this point, and he's now going to have to explain why there's this, gross figure wearing disgusting t-shirts with
Yeah.
he wears
Nice.
Crocs and just like
No
anti
deodorant. Yeah.
exactly, yeah, he's always vaping in your face, and he's got like a female body inspector t-shirt, stuff
Yeah.
like that, where he's just like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice. And at this point, does Russ know that Bob is the lieutenant of the big bad guy Bill, or
yes, he does know that. So that's
he
a little bit
does?
different than what we talked about with
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't know how to navigate that. Either they form a bond, which is unlikely at this point, or yeah, that'll have to be figured out.
Yeah, I mean, I liked that idea after we hashed it over a little bit last time about the idea that Bob appears to be a good force and a good helper for Russ,
Yeah,
but then he later finds out that Bob is, he's working entirely for Bill, the
yeah,
big bad guy.
yeah,
And there's a kind of a plot twist there. And if that was the case, then Russ would have to find some real value keeping this dirty character around, right?
right,
Or to continue hanging out with him or whatever. So with Adam gone as a guide into this new world,
yeah,
uh, then he and Russ doesn't know anybody else in this world. Bob sort of presents himself as a helper, maybe for a
yeah,
price or for whatever his reasons or whatever his pretend reasons are,
yeah,
right? And then
yeah,
how does that, so and so there's a few things going on here, because Russ being, well, like a high achiever and has all the money to dress well and drive a nice car and all that stuff. Now we have that odd couple um,
yeah,
kind of thing here, where Russ isn't used to all this,
yeah,
but he has to accept it, right?
yeah. I'm thinking about what needs to change. There's a couple moments that would have to be changed, but it wouldn't be a big deal.
Yeah, and also, one of the things that Russ is going through is that how difficult must it be for him to be in a world that is completely out of his control when he's
Yeah,
accustomed to, having everything go his way, and he's thought he's been the master of his own success, but you
yeah,
know, so now he's getting a snootful of the
yes,
truth,
yeah,
right? Little by little, he's learning you know, what was really going on that whole time.
yeah.
Um,
So
I
that's
also go ahead.
No, no, that's it. That's where ending at so far. So,
Okay, nice. Well, that's really good progress. How do you feel?
I get really excited and really pleased with myself, and then I sit back in my haunches, and then we go through it on Sunday, and I'm like, yeah, there's a million more things to do now. Just- but it seems to work best for me where I almost have to force my own back against the wall, and then I'll like have a big push, and I just it goes in waves, and it's all just like some nights I just can't do it, and other nights I'm like
Yeah,
I can't help but do it.
4,000 words.
Yeah. And other
Yeah,
nights I can't be bothered to get a sentence out. It's
yeah,
I don't know what the magic formula is, but I just try to be there when the universe is ready to let me have it. I better be ready for it, I guess.
yeah. And then the muse bent down and kissed me on the cheek.
I was trying not to say that this whole time.
Right. Well, there is an element of magic to it. That's one of the fun things about it is that I mean, if you think about it, you're literally pulling uh, a life and a world from another dimension.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why the muse is important to us, right? Or should be, or can be, I should say,
yeah,
is that this stuff comes from somewhere else.
yeah.
I don't know about you, but I've never been a successful businessman with a genie living inside me,
No, not so far.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
and it feels really, really cool when you're working on it.
yeah. Though when I am least paying attention to it, and I
Mm,
look back later, I'm like, whoa, yeah, that's a really cool feeling.
yeah, that's awesome. So, and you're making really good progress. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see how you're developing the story. And yeah, you're going down some blind
Yeah,
alleys, and running into a wall here and there. But overall, you're on your way to creating a really cool story. How
thanks,
do you
man.
feel
Yeah.
about it?
No, I feel awesome, and it feels entirely possible. And I mean, I have this 90,000 word count in my head as like the goal, and and I'm 16,000 more words than I had 2 months ago, and that feels really
Hmm.
freaking cool. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Good deal. Well, do you have any other questions about about the writing process? Anything that's come up that you've been a little confused about, unsure about?
lot of
You know.
a lot of swear words. It's it's
Uh-huh.
it's like whatever. I feel like a drunken sailor or something sometimes. I don't know if it's the cop out is that's my voice, right? But then sometimes I'm like, maybe it's just lazy. So, and I guess it depends who I'm trying to market this to, or who I want to read it, because it's
Well,
obvious it's not
yeah,
YA right now. I'll tell you that.
right.
So,
Well, I mean, we're talking about genre expectations, right?
yeah,
And there is a bit of a challenge for people like us who have potty mouths to, how do I say this, forcefully without, using the F word and that kind of stuff. And, definitely can be done if that's the audience you're writing for. And you don't have to be writing for kids, by the way, in order to say, I don't want to include all this language, or this genre in general doesn't include a lot of that kind of foul language.
yeah,
And then it can be fun to come up with different kinds of curses.
yeah, yeah. Which could be
Uh,
really challenging, because when curses are used, I don't know. You cannot like, yeah. It bothers me when I'm like, you should just say the F word, and people say something else, and
yeah.
so
A good example of this is I'm working on my YA trilogy about the demon girl. Well, she has one of her bosses is a demon, and she's asking him questions about what she should be doing on this job she has, and he says, "Oh, your generation, you're a pain in the horns. You want everything handed to you." So you just, you know, replace ass with horns, and
yeah,
you've got something that's on theme for a
yeah,
demon.
that makes sense. I like that,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
fits into
but
that genre too. So yeah,
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, Yeah, you work that out. That's low on the uh, list of concerns. But
Yeah, right. Because like right now, it just seems like it should just get it on the page,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. There was also a while ago, I was working on a story. This is 10 or more years ago, and you're not supposed to say the R word to describe someone who's developmentally disabled. Well, when I was a kid, the R word was like a step toward, being more kind,
Hmm.
right? Because there were a lot of words that were used for people in that state that were a lot less kind. So
Hmm.
now that's changed. I wrote it into a story about 10 or 12 years ago, and my wife said, I don't think you probably don't want to use that, especially for a YA story. And so I replaced it with, and the line was, I have to say something because I just right now I look like I'm retarded. And Pat said, and I said, so I replaced the R word with feeble, and I
Oh,
like that a lot better.
yeah, yeah.
you know? So, anything else that's come up?
Um, what about no, the I was trying to think about that thing you were showing me earlier this week. Did you want to talk about that at all?
I don't remember
The
what it
Kickstarter
is.
deal?
Oh yeah, I might as well promote our Kickstarter. So we currently one of my one of my projects is this one right here called Badass Girl. It's a comic book that we've currently have 4 issues done, and we are doing a Kickstarter for that. And let me jump on there and I'll show it off. So what we're doing is we've created, or we are creating uh, a special book for Kickstarter, and that is that we're hold on, let me do this right. Get this shared. Let's drop that. And let's add this. Thank you for playing along as I. It's funny, there's like 3 or 4 different buttons I have to push to get something up here, so I'll just keep talking myself through it. So, Badass Girl is about a girl who was orphaned in the alien invasion that wiped out the Earth and most of humanity, and raised in the forest by a mysterious Chinese woman who turned her into a weapon for justice. And now, with no home and no family and no friends, she walks the earth kicking butt on bad guys who prey on the innocent. So we're for this round, we're trying to raise $3,000. We're about a third of the way there. This will help pay for the next issue, which will be issue 5, and that'll be the first in the next story arc. So we're going in 4 issue story arcs. And one of the things that we've created for that is is as a special reward and not available elsewhere. And by the way, we've got some really cool covers that have been made for us by other artists. This is going to be an actually a holofoil cover, which is sort of a metallic. And then we've got this awesome cover here, which is just
Wow.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool. And then we're going to do a metal. The compilation is going to be all 4 issues plus some bonus material, and there'll be a metal version of this of that cover.
Sweet.
So, get down to where we are right now. So this is what the non-metal version of the trade paperback will look like. So there's multiple levels that you can pledge and get your rewards. And yeah, we're just promoting this. This one was really cool. I don't even know if I've got a. We had an artist who just read the books and wanted to do something because he liked them so much. I'm just trying to see if there's a bigger picture of that anywhere. And he created this little uh, tiny badass girl.
Oh yeah,
Um, yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but I wish I
yeah.
had a way to. Yeah, there she is, right there.
It's like a
So
almost like a
we,
Funko Pop size deal.
yeah, exactly. So we decided to do that as a T-shirt, and so that was really cool too. So yeah, we're getting some buzz, and we definitely want more supporters. You know, we want to spread the word about Badass Girl and get some some funds to continue. And this has been just a lot of fun. I mean, with COVID, it took us like 3 years or more to get all 4 issues done. And having this done has been a big one. We actually sell a lot more now that we've got four of them because a lot of comic book enthusiasts, they don't want to start a series until there's a storyline done.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so that's been a lot of fun. And if you or anybody you know is a comic book fan or just wants to support a badass girl, go to Kickstarter and look up Badass Girl. That is where we are at. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so that's a big project that we're doing right now. And yeah, thank you. Anything you want to know about or ask about in preparing for the next week?
No, I really appreciate your feedback on the magic system and the Bob character. Sometimes I get it in my head that I it becomes so precious to me that I don't want to share it out, and then within like 4 seconds, in a very nice way, you're like, that doesn't make sense, which is
Yeah,
good
that.
because I would
Mhm.
hate to have it be out in the world and have it not make any sense. So
Yeah, yeah. Way
I've
to get
gotten
those
some
reviews.
feedback from my uncle who watches this, and he's like, "You're very brave to be doing this out in public," and it is, but it's like every time I do this and I don't come away dead, I'm like, it's fine. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's good. It's
Yeah.
good for me.
Yeah, and well, I was certainly like that when I wouldn't share anything at first. And yeah, it does take some extra courage, and I appreciate you for putting it out there, and it's helping or will help a lot more people as well to get started. As I wrote in the writing rabble up there in the corner, if you want to if you want to start writing, get that book. I think it has the potential to help people get started. Is to take away this idea that you have to be extraordinary somehow to I have to have a MFA in creative writing or have to have had exceptional experiences or something, and it's just not true. If you want to write and you think you have a story, there's a way to do it. And as I said, that helping you is helping me a lot too. So all right, cool, we good? All right, well, let me sign us off and then we will get out of here. All right, thanks for joining us, Writing Rabble. It's been a really good hour and 18 minutes. We could pretend that we're trying to do an hour, but we'll just go with what we've got. So today we went over briefly the Story Hill template that I created for Scrivener, and which if you go to literatureandlatte.com, I believe it's called, or just Google Scrivener, Scrivener. Literature and Latte are the people who created Scrivener. Super, just a really powerful way to organize your stories. And we went over that briefly, how he did the whole color coding thing, and then we switched over to Wes, who wasn't able to, or the color coding and all the special icons and stuff didn't transfer. So I've got some work to do this week and find out how to do that. But and then we went over Wes's story, how he's gotten started, and how he is using the Story Hill and the plot points that go along with it to create a story and what's working and what's not. And hopefully, just keep it's more like shepherding and gardening than it is it's as much building. So it's a lot of fun. So we are going to be back next week with more info and more story progress from Wes. And if you have any comments, please post them in YouTube, and I will look at them and try to get back to everybody. So till next time, writing rabble, butt in chair, words on page. Bye now.